all for joining us today and for showing up on a very rainy day in Mumbai. I'm Anupama Sajid, Features Editor at Manifest, and it's my pleasure to host this wonderful gathering. We are joined today by an incredible cross-section of India's advertising, marketing, and media ecosystem that includes brand and agency leaders, creative professionals, industry bodies, and members of the media, all brought together by a shared belief that the stories we create have the power to shape society. Today marks another significant milestone as we unveil the findings of the IAA Voice of Change India Advertising Midline Study on gender representation and inclusion trends. Conducted by the Gina Davis Institute in collaboration with UNICEF, this study analyzes 1,000 multilingual Indian advertisements over the past 2 years. This journey began in 2021 with a landmark baseline study that gave our industry its first comprehensive view of how gender is viewed and represented in Indian advertising, sparking an honest and necessary conversation. Over the years, the initiative has brought together agencies, brands, and industry leaders. Organizations including Havas, Omnicom, VML, Ogilvy, Madison, Famous Innovations, Scarecrow, Leo, and many others have opened their doors to these discussions within their own teams. However, none of this would have been possible without two remarkable leaders who have passionately steered this initiative from the very beginning. The IAA Voice of Change initiative is led by Neena Elavia Jaipuria, Chairperson, Women Empowerment Committee, IAA India Chapter, a distinguished media and business leader whose career spans over 3 decades and who has consistently championed inclusive leadership and purposeful storytelling across industry. Alongside her is Megha Tata, Co-Chairperson, Women Empowerment Committee, IAA India Chapter, a respected media veteran with over 3 decades of experience and one of the driving forces behind this initiative. I now invite Neena Elavia Jaipuria and Megha Tata to join us on stage and share their opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming them with a warm round of applause.
Hello, everybody. We're all safe from the deluge of yesterday. You don't know how hard we've prayed to the rain gods, and of course, they've been very happy with us. So thank you very much. A very, very good afternoon to all of you. A very warm welcome on behalf of IAA, India Chapter. As you can see, it's spotlessly dry today, and we're happy, but of course, there'll be some bits of uncertainty on travel and commute and people who are flying in, so we can expect more people through that door. Excuse us for that. But thank you so much for your precious time, and thank you for actually being in this room, because being in this room means being the voice of change. So let's applaud for all of you in this room. Thank you for being here. Let me start by, I'll hand off to Megha once I do the introduction. Let me start by something that I came across, some commercials that I came across in the IPL this year. And it said, आज डिनर पे क्या है? मैनेजर की कुर्सी पे कौन बैठा है? And you know, my heart blossomed when I saw those ads, because the wife asked the husband, what's for dinner tonight? The wife asked the husband. And indeed, on the manager's chair was a young lady. And that is what we are here for today, to see those young women on those managers' chairs in the ad that you guys create. So now I'm going to step back a little bit, just to give you context of how it all started, what the journey was so far. IAA and UNICEF joined hands a couple of years ago, and I can see a lot of our UNICEF guys here. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for this partnership. You have no idea what it means to us, and we'll talk more about that. But we joined hands in a very pioneering initiative, if I may say so, to take on the mission of, equitable and inclusive gender representation in media across platforms in advertising, marketing, communication, and content. we should not undermine the power that advertising has today. Advertising is not just the mirror to society's values, beliefs, and expectations, but to me, more importantly, advertising has the power to influence behavior and shape society and culture. Children, girls and boys, young impressionable minds, adolescents, young people are exposed to a lot of advertising on screens and off. And I can tell you they are deeply influenced by that advertising, which often leads to creating normative behavior. Whether it's a 30-second, 20-second TVC or a 3-minute long digital commercial, it has a far-reaching impact on children and young people who are the generation of tomorrow, and what they aspire to be, what they believe they can become, what they can do, the choices that they have, and the possibilities should be rooted in hardcore equity. And that's when UNICEF India's baseline study was published in 2021 along with IAA, done by the experts, of course, the Gina Davis Institute, with best-in-class methodology and technology, which measured representation in the top 1,000 most viewed ads in the country across languages on television and digital. And very disappointedly, I must say, the research showed very disturbing trends of rampant stereotyping, tropes, discrimination, disproportionate representation. And those portrayals have a direct impact on children and young people. They often actually tend to see themselves and others in the society in that way. And I think that is what actually gave rise to and birth to Voice of Change. So Voice of Change actually is a collective effort with IA and UNICEF to come together and actively engage with the industry, with all of you people in this room, with marketeers, advertisers, brand custodians, agencies, all the stakeholders, to create awareness, to inform you, to help you to create more balanced, more equitable narratives. So over the last 5-6 years, IA, Voice of Change, has had very meaningful interactions across the industry, across cities, through roadshows. And a lot of you are here today whose agencies we've been to. So we go agency to agency to agency, talk to teams. Sam, thank you, we were in Madison, I remember. So we actually do that, talk to the teams. We've also done summits. We've done association forums. In fact, the last one Megha did with Goa Fest just last month. So what we do really here is we try to urge, we want to inspire, we want to encourage every single brand, custodian, and creator of content to use a gender lens to, create content and campaigns that are mindful, which are balanced and authentic, because they not only, of course, meet the business objectives, which is why they are being made, but also go a long way in shaping a more progressive and a more inclusive society, and which is where we all want to be. I'll stop here, but I have to bring this out because I read it on the Sunday newspaper. We've seen the scene about the mothers hustling in the kitchen, making breakfast, packing lunch boxes while the children and the husband are gobbling breakfast and getting ready to go to office and work. All of us are familiar with the scene? Anybody who thinks otherwise? Okay. So on Sunday in the newspaper, I came across this one article which says, lunch box shaming makes mornings harder for parents. Of course, it was a very intriguing article to begin with. But what delighted me was the word parents. It was parents. It was not the mother. And that's where we are. 5 years later, cut to the midline study. And I'll now request Megha to take over from here and talk about the way forward.
Thank you, Nina. Nina shared the journey, how it began. And I think one of the things which we feel very happy and proud about is that IAA and UNICEF came on together to partner to make this voice come alive. But we feel that in the last 6 years, we've played a role of a catalyst in bringing many more industry bodies bring this conversation forward. Because we know that when it's not just one voice, we need many voices to make that impact happen. And so we're very excited to share also the fact that there are so many other industry bodies, whether it was ASCII or the Ad Club or the Advertising Association of India and the Marketers Association. Every industry body has been bringing these conversations either to their own organizations or in individual initiatives, or even associations like Unstereotype Alliance. Everyone's talking about bringing more inclusivity and breaking the biases in our advertising and our communication. So as a result of all what we have been doing, the impact had to be measured. So we did the baseline study, we did a great job, we found out that things were not looking so pretty, but how do we, when we started these interventions with all the workshops which Nina spoke about, we had to also understand, did all of this make the needle move? Did any of this we've done so far make any impact at all? Did any of the initiatives we've taken created a bit more consciousness in the minds of the creative community when they're putting their next creative thought process in together? And hence it was very important to bring a midline study into place, because we had to understand whether the discussions, the conversations, the engagement is actually making any difference at all or not. And that is what we are here today to speak about. With GDI and with UNICEF's support, we have been able to do the similar exercise 5 years later with another set of 1,000 ads which were most viewed on TV and digital across languages to see whether any of this has made at all a difference or not. So we will be unveiling that study, and more of that will happen as the afternoon unfolds. And there will be a lot more discussions on a fabulous panel which has been put together, and a really exciting fireside chat, which I'm really looking forward to with Josie, and to understand and bring these voices to speak about, how important it is, such as these initiatives. And this journey for us, today is actually, we are not calling it like a destination, because the journey needs to continue. We need to keep speaking, get these conversations happening. More of us need to be speaking, not only in forums like this, but individually, wherever you are, in your own homes and capacities, in your professional capacities. How can we make that difference is all up to us. So this IA Voice of Change with UNICEF's support and GDI's support in bringing this study to life has been an incredible journey for us. And I think there's more to be unfolded, so I won't take too much time, but I just do want to sort of share, in this 5-6 years, we've had multiple interactions with a lot of creative people, right? And in fact, I was just speaking to Bo separately outside, and personally, we've been in this industry for over 3 decades, as was mentioned. The kind of change we have seen in our advertising in the last 5 to 7 years is very palpable. There is far more inclusive content which is being created, not only in advertising, across all genres. If you look at the films, you look at the OTT, you look at digital content, a lot of inclusive, lot of stereotype breaking is definitely taking place. So definitely things are looking good. But there's so much more yet to be achieved. There's so much more yet to be fixed, for want of a better word. So I think that is where interventions like this, discussions like this, studies like this, supports partners like y'all makes a big difference in making that happen. Because that little girl sitting somewhere in Rai Bareli or somewhere in Jharkhand needs to know that her life is not only about cooking, cleaning, and bringing up children. There is more to life she deserves. So with that, I will now hand it back to our host, and really hope that you enjoy this afternoon and lots to unveil as the evening goes along. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neena and Megha, for this inspiring opening remarks, and also for striving relentlessly to transform this movement into a conversation. Can we have another round of applause for Neena Jaipuria and Megha Tata? Meaningful change is only possible when industries come together with institutions that share a common purpose. From the very beginning, UNICEF has been an invaluable knowledge partner in this journey, bringing global expertise and an unwavering commitment to advancing equity. It is now my pleasure to invite Jairus Ligu, Child Protection Specialist, UNICEF India, to address us. Jairus has worked with UNICEF across multiple countries, championing adolescent empowerment, child protection, and social change. Here in India, he has played a pivotal role in strengthening collaborations with the private sector to help challenge harmful social norms. Please join me in welcoming Jairus Ligu. Yeah, sure.
Thanks for letting me share this you. Thanks, Neena and Megha, for those opening remarks. And thanks to all of you for not just being brave to be here today, but also being committed to be here today to support the cause that we're all working for. So, Neena, you did mention that we might not know the value of this partnership. I want to reassure you that we know the value of this partnership. It's about working with associations like the IAA and the entire industry that we can be able to contribute in some of the most creative ways in driving change in our society. And for Megha, of course, the collective voices, the collective action that everybody does bring to the table, that's what's really the fuel that drives the change. Many years ago, way back in 2015, I first came to India before I knew that I'd be working with UNICEF in India. And I was in Hyderabad, and I remember arriving in Hyderabad and taking this long drive towards the venue where this training was taking place. And it's a drive that exposed me to the early advertising experience that I would have with India. So along all this road, about a 30 minutes drive to the center of the city, and I would pass all these various advertising billboards, different topics. Some talking about perhaps the strongest, best steel in the country, and there'd be a portrayal of somebody in that advert. Some talking about the best cardamom seeds that you'd ever have, and there would be a portrayal of somebody else in that advertising. And there were lots of them. So you can imagine this very short experience for me, just a couple of minutes, but you can also imagine the children, the individuals, the young people, the men and women who have to live with all this large plethora of advertisements every day, every week, every month, every year. And they grow up through them. And what the Midline Study is telling us, and you've just mentioned about the 5 years it's taken, your reflections on an article you read last week that tells the story of change. And that's exactly how change happens. You might not be seeing it, experiencing it, but sometimes it's through an article that you'll read. It could also be through the study, the kind of study that we've done, that then gives you the whole wealth of very critical analysis. And as you so said, done in a way that it actually is scientific in the analysis that it's been done. And that's the story we'd like to share today when you go through this event. For UNICEF, it's also perhaps one of the ways that we champion change in addressing issues that take time to be addressed, like norms, issues around gender, the way we relate between the different sexes in society. And it also confirms that when you see children growing through all this wide range of the products that the industry, like the industries you are in, is churning, it also contributes to the way they grow, the kind of perceptions that they perceive. It might just be a very small, short few seconds of an advert, but to many children, it tells them who the society values. It tells them who is caring. You talked about somebody preparing packed lunch for the family. But it also tells them, who is this person who is preparing these meals for us for the day? It shows the care. It also shows the kind of identities that they're forming. And for adolescents, the generation that I'm really working with, that particular time that they're growing, what they're being exposed to, shapes their identities. And some of them forever. They will form these opinions as they grow, and those opinions stay with them. It takes quite a lot to change them, twist them. But if they've grown seeing them days, months, years on end, some of those things really do become the solid foundation for their identities. So when girls repeatedly see women shown mainly in domestic roles, it does reinforce some elements and the perceptions that they have to grow with. It does the same thing for boys as well. So all of us together. So whether it's authority being portrayed, whether it's intelligence, all these end up remaining an image in the minds of the people that we want to change. And that's why for us in UNICEF, the work that we do, especially looking at how norms can be tackled, it's perhaps one of the most difficult parts of the work that we have to do. Providing a stationery in a school, very easy to deliver. Providing a training for a frontline worker, very easy to deliver. But things around changing the mindset, especially if the elements that you've grown with in society, perhaps one of the most difficult ones to do. And the baseline evidence that we now have gives us a starting point. We can now reflect on some of the stereotypes being depicted in the advertising that we have here in the country. And we can also be able to start seeing that actually change is possible. You've just given an example of one advert that you've seen during one of the cricket tournaments that we have. And now we have the FIFA World Cup 2026 going on. And I've spent quite a long time of my minutes over the last couple of days and weeks, not just watching the soccer, but also watching the adverts. And there's a wide range of them, different realities, whether it's a relationship between a boy and a girl in a particular scenario, what looks awkward for the boy versus what doesn't look awkward for the girl, whether it's about a brand that's telling the story around certain qualities, we still have them. And seeing how those changes have happened, whether it's in the reduction of sexualization, in the visibility being given to certain genders in the advertisements, all tell the story of the kind of change that we've been trying to drive. But these are not small shifts. You're talking about 5 years of change. And one of the questions that we need to start asking ourselves really is that change really adequate at the moment? And Nina, you've clearly said it's still a journey. I think there is still quite a long part of that journey still to be navigated. The work is not over, and perhaps maybe we are just starting. And having the baseline gives us a chance to still further then compare, analyze whether we are making progress or we are stagnating. And I think it gives us a very good starting point to keep on digging deeper into this analysis. From a child protection perspective, from where we work, we can also see that some of these indications also tell to also what's changing in society. You might just be the advertising industry, but there is still a very great facet of society that we also need to work with. Some of these are service providers, either in government or other allied services, delivering services. And some of them also consumers, the children themselves, the boys and the girls. So looking back to my first Hyderabad experience, I also want to say that this tells us the story of what we need to now ask ourselves. As creators, you need to be looking at the lenses, sharp agenda lenses, to some of the creative products that you're producing, to the brands that you represent, questioning some of the signals that you send to society, girls and boys, and parents alike. And also when you are identifying, casting for the roles, how you assign some of those roles also tells the story of how the industry is changing or not, further reinforcing some of the elements that we want to try and change. So it's a question about responsibility, it's about accountability. For UNICEF, in terms of the partnership that we have with associations like yours, it's an opportunity for us to come together to champion the rights of children, to champion the rights of adolescent girls and boys, and also to make sure that society can be growing together as one. So for everyone who is seated in this room today, I just want to say that know that your decisions matter. Whether you are crafting a brief, a storyline, that is actually the beginning of the change. The kind of storyline that you craft and how it ends up being executed, the response in society, know that you are also being part of that change, and it starts also with you. Finally, we will have a panel engaging a few minutes after this, and we will have the chance to interrogate further some of the stories and some of the elements that will be reflected in this baseline study. I want to stop here and congratulate all of you again for making it to this space, to congratulate the partnership that we have with IAA, the Gina Davis Institute, and the entire advertising industry, and my colleagues in UNICEF. We look forward to continuing these partnerships, being creative in the way we take forward some of the elements of this work, and also being creative in sustaining the change. So thank you so much for these few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Jairus. Our next speaker has been one of the strongest global champions for transforming representation in media and entertainment through the power of research. Her work has had a profound impact on advertisers and storytellers across the world. It is my privilege to introduce Madeline D. Nono, President and CEO of the Gina Davis Institute, the world's leading research-driven organization dedicated to advancing authentic representation in media. Under her leadership, the Institute has become a globally respected voice, helping industries measure progress through data-backed insights. Please direct your attentions to the screen as Madeline D. Nono joins us virtually. She was unable to join us in person, unfortunately.
Greetings, everyone. This is Madeline D. Nono, President and CEO. Advertising influences behaviors of people over a period, and children and young people are especially influenced by advertising, and in many cases, they create normative behaviors. Children are the future of tomorrow, and it's really, really important that the media they consume can inspire them and show them possibilities. Therefore, advertising must be gender equitable and responsible. This is why this research came back to us in 2021, and we were so excited to conduct an updated baseline and see what was being reflected through Indian ads. And the baseline showed us gaps and many challenges, but very nuanced and usually missed. UNICEF established a partnership with IAA to address these challenges and launched the Voice of Change collectivity. And this campaign has tried to address stereotypes over the last 4 years, even amidst the time that we lost during COVID and strikes and many other things. The Gina Davis Institute has been very committed to this partnership and this work, and using this technology and the methodology to be established and trusted and provide credible baseline and midline. So really excited for you to see this study, and I hope we'll look at the full report. Thank you.
We are excited as well to see the study and its findings. Thank you, Madeline, for joining us virtually and for your continued partnership. We are grateful for the Gina Davis Institute for walking this journey with us over the years. And with that, we now arrive at one of the most significant moments of today's program. Research doesn't just help us understand where we stand, it defines where we need to go. It is my privilege to invite Team IAA and Team UNICEF to come together on stage for the official unveiling of the IAA Voice of Change Midline Study. May I request our distinguished dignitaries to kindly join us on stage? Ladies and gentlemen, the official unveiling of the IAA Voice of Change Midline Study. Congratulations to everyone who has contributed to this important milestone. May I request our dignitaries to remain on stage for a few moments as we capture the landmark occasion. Thank you. Another warm round of applause, please, for everyone on stage. Thank you. You may now take your seats. Now that the study has been officially unveiled, it's time to delve deeper into what the findings tell us. To present the key insights from the Midline Study, may I invite Gitanjali Master, Public-Private Partnership Specialist, UNICEF India. With over 2 decades at UNICEF, Gitanjali has worked extensively at the intersection of business, partnerships, and child rights, helping build collaborations that encourage responsible business practices and sustainable social impact. Please join me in welcoming Gitanjali Master.
Thank you, everyone, and a very good afternoon to everyone here. A massive thanks to the International Advertising Association India chapter and the entire industry that's really been part of this journey with us from 2020. I think we've heard from Megha, Nina, Jairus, and I think the context is really beautifully set. Before I just move into this presentation, I'll take literally a minute to step back 5-6 years. I remember I was in the field in Bihar, and I was meeting this little girl, and we were sitting in a large group, right? And we were basically talking about what they want to become, and there were some people who were shy, there were some who were very talkative, as usual. They were between 13 and 15. And I particularly, we were talking about what you want to become, and people were generally saying teacher and doctor and so on. And then there was this one girl who was very sort of quiet and little shy. So I asked her, I said, do you want to, share what you want to become? And she started, she was a little hesitant, and then she said, just like my mother. So I said, oh, okay. And I said, what is it that you love about your mother? So she said, she cooks for us, and she looks after me, and she takes so much care of me, and she was happy. And then she kept quiet. And then after 5 minutes, she said, can I say something? I said, yeah. And she said, do you watch so-and-so program on TV? She asked me, on Doordarshan. And I said, yeah, I've watched it. And she says, when they show the ads, etc., I just... my father always tells me at home that, see how girls should be. And when she talked about that ad, I was quiet, and then I started to think about it. And it was very clear, right? She was 13 and a half. She was very influenced. Her father, who was like a role model for her at home, told her that that's really the role of girls and women, and look at it carefully and see and think about it. So in her mind, she was clear that that's what she wanted to do. Cut to a day and a half later, we were still in the field, and we were still engaging with the community, and also happened to meet some of the girls. She said, I didn't know that I can be anything else. So the power of what we communicate is really there, and I think it's been reiterated by everyone here. The midline, the baseline was done in 2021. The findings were out, and we 4.5 years later, similar, most viewed ads were actually researched. Madeline shared what the Gina Davis Institute bought, and I think they have been a really consistent key partner to this. And you will see through this what nuances are, right? So obviously, I'm just going to very quickly, the one bit of information here is the unit of analysis is always the character, right? We try and see how the characters are portrayed. So before we move into the findings, I wanted to quickly take you all through what were some of the lessons we learned, right, in this journey between the baseline and now. We understood that evidence is foundational. When we talk to industry, when we are engaging with industry or any other stakeholder, if we don't have evidence, we're really speaking fluidly. Yeah, there are gender stereotypes, but what do we mean by that is what the nuances said. So yes, this helped. Collaboration was key. Even before we initiated the baseline, the partnership with IAA was in place. This is an industry-owned initiative. Thanks to all of you. This is an industry-led initiative. UNICEF has always played the role of a knowledge partner, and we hope to continue to do so. But really, this is ownership is with the industry. Madeline spoke about a coding framework, and even for all of us, IAA, UNICEF, some other partners, it was quite a revelation because, we speak about gender equity. At least what we had understood was, are women there in ads as equal as men? And then we realized there's so many more layers to it, which we'll just go through. Positive role models. We also understood that influencers, people who actually are on screen, how they're influencing younger adults, children, what is their role to play. And so through this journey of the last 5 years, we've also really spoken with influencers who've come in and shared their views, and that's made a lot of difference as well. I think Megha mentioned this. One of the big pieces of work that we also did was to continuously look at the advocacy or influencing the policies bit. With ASCII, when this initiative was on, they actually launched the National Gender Guidelines for Advertising. UNICEF's technical teams also shared insights into those guidelines, and those were launched by the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, who later the IAA also bought into a Voice of Change summit with Google. So, what we understand is that when we're doing this, advocacy and really linking with different stakeholders is absolutely crucial. So, key wins. I'm going to go through this now. So, what we saw is that men and women are definitely similarly prominent in ads. It's not like there are more men than women, and that came through quite clearly both in 2019 and 24. International comparison, how they were being portrayed in other countries, and we've also had conversations. IAA also was kind enough to share experiences of India with China, with the Caribbean, and we found that typically male-female representation in ads pretty much similar. Coming now to more nuanced information, women in the workforce. What we definitely saw, and I'd urge you to look at the blue lines here, we saw that the female characters in paid occupations or women shown working has gone up substantively, at least a few percentage points, right? So if you have women being shown in paid occupations or shown working, both men and women, but for women, we've seen a slightly higher amount. Office or men and women both in office scenarios is not been so great. The caregiving load, right? And I think here again, this was interesting because earlier what we used to see was women in parenting roles only. And that percentage of female characters being shown in parenting roles has dropped. Also shown caregiving has dropped substantively. For men, also it's dropped, but the percentage is much little. And I think if we look at how the gender gap has reduced, so women are obviously not only being shown in parenting and caregiving roles alone. Again, if we look at the load, so this was interesting, and that's where we talked about codifying and the nuances, making household decisions, shopping, cleaning, preparation of meals. All those have actually come down from 2019 to 2024, which was one of the areas that IAA really sort of advocated for when engaging with the industry as well. So we see that difference, and also that women are shown less in ads solely as caregivers and domestic roles. Body diversity, right? And I think that's something that we often don't speak about much, but really body sizes and really looking at how we can have proportion of characters who are not typically the way people think they should be, but also diverse body sizes. And so proportion of, for example, overweight characters also was seen to be higher between 2019 and 2024. Are ads only going to have characters that are very young or looking in a certain way? And I think that's another area that IAA really took on with the sensitization and that journey that we've had with the industry. That can we look at it being more diverse, and when we talk about inclusivity, it also means that we're not only looking at one type of look. And therefore, the proportion of 50 plus characters by gender also went up. Not a very high percentage, but yes, definitely it was there. And these are all nuances that we're speaking about in this presentation that have also been taken on as conversation points in the engagement with the industry by the IAA. Skin tone, I think, is something that has been a challenge and has been also addressed by the advertising industry, by brands, etc. themselves. So I'd just like to also say something I should have said at the beginning. This is not really something that's started off only with this initiative. The advertising industry, the brands, the marketeers, the owners of the brand and products have, for a very long time, also been on this journey, right? So it's not like it's only a set of people who started this. The voice of change has obviously accelerated or catalyzed it, but there's a lot of work that's already happened in the industry around this area. So just to say that both female and male characters are definitely seen to have medium to dark skin tones more than it was in 2019, another area that was spoken about actively, and advertisers and others did share their views on this as well. The sexualization in advertising, and I think one of the lots of discussions used to happen after the baseline was out. When we went to agencies, I still remember there was a young creative, one of the team members who came in and shared an experience, and he said that, we always have to give it a second look when we're looking at creating ads, because, how does it seem if a woman is standing against a really stunning car? And I think somebody gave the example of Thar, right? And more ads where women and men both are driving cars and women are not just standing in front of a car. And I think those things have changed substantively as well. So I think when we talk about revealing clothing, etc., you can see, or even partial nudity and looking at objectifications, all of those have come down substantively. And I think this has also been a very open conversation that's happened in the road shows and in the engagements with the industry, all led by the industry. So essentially, take away from the key wins that we've had and that we've seen, where we've seen, we see that women and men appear equally often. That was the standard. But when we get into nuances, we look at increases in body diversity, darker skin tones, sexualization has dropped, gender norms are less prevalent, with more women likely to be shown in beyond caregiving roles as well. Moving to opportunities, and I think Jairus mentioned it, Nina mentioned it, so did Megha. There's a journey, and there's, we have a long way to go before we sleep. And so if we look at caregiving responsibilities, right? Even though the gaps are smaller, female characters are still 2 times more likely than male characters to be shown in caregiving and parenting. And I think that's what it shows, that, you can't make this change happen in 4 years. It's going to take time, right? And then the journey is begun. But if we really look at it, there is a huge difference between men and women being shown as such. Domestic responsibilities, again, the gap may have reduced, but 2 times more likely if they're shopping, if they're cleaning, preparation of meals. And so we just have to think about making the gap smaller. Men still dominate in workplaces, shown to be in leadership roles. If you look at the paid occupation, 16.727, that's huge. If we look at shown working, again, leadership roles, there is a difference. And I think those gaps have to be shut. We have to show many more women working, earning, and so on. Pursuing education, this gap is not huge, but again, there's a difference between women being shown to pursue education as opposed to men. And as you can see, it's almost 1.5 times more. While there has been more women being shown in larger body sizes, definitely smaller body sizes than men. And I think that's something that we see, that, still, even now, if they have to choose the characters, what is the lens on related to that? Again, skin tones as well. If you look at it, female characters, 47%, and male characters, 27%. So even though the gap has reduced, so if there were 60% more women being showed, with a lighter skin tone, now it's less. But still, if we compare it to men, it's almost double. And of course, I think this is something that we see, that, even though the gap has reduced from 2019 to 2024, if we compare the metric as far as women and men are concerned, that gap still persists, and how do we start addressing some of those gaps? The same thing, it's different from male characters, much less. Younger adults, women are much, much more represented. Whereas if you look at older adults, the men are much more there. So I think women are rarely chosen for 50 plus ads. They have to look in a certain way. And that conversation has happened quite actively when we've engaged with the industry. So here we are. I think the needle has moved, but the needle has to move much more. And I think that's already something that the industry has taken on as a challenge and as a journey that they have initiated, and then they own it. And the Voice of Change is really an industry initiative. UNICEF is there as a knowledge partner. We are very proud to be part of this whole journey, and we will continue to keep generating evidence, whether it's anecdotal or data. But this is what it shows us, that while we've moved the needle, we have a lot more to be done together. So some of the recommendations that came through, and I just want to highlight here, this is not prescriptive at all. These are recommendations that we have on this presentation, which have come to us from the industry. In engaging with the industry over the last 4 years, this has really been something that we've heard time and again, and we've just kind of put it together. So of course, if we look at what the industry can do, this is something that came to us from the various roadshows across the country. Strive for gender parity across all advertisements. Of course, men and women speaking roles was one thing that came through. Intersectionally, when we are casting, something that Jairus alluded to, have more girls and women with a darker skin tone, as we are okay with having men with a darker skin tone. The sexualization of girls and women, and really thinking about how they have to be dressed, what are they wearing, how are they being. Let's not focus on just the body, but beyond. Also be very mindful of tropes. And I remember this was in one of the agencies that, how do we address this piece, that when we think of a bedroom scene or we think of a drawing room, are we immediately thinking of a man sitting and reading the paper? So this was again something that came to us from one of the agency industry conversations, which was interesting, that, how do we change that? How do we build it differently? Of course, showing more girls and women in work and leadership roles. And I think the more we show girls educated, leading, sharing, it becomes the norm, which it isn't really currently. Of course, we've moved a long way. And then, of course, cast more female characters in also funny ads, right? They're not supposed to be correct and all the time responsible, but they can also be doing or carrying a narrative themselves. And of course, showing more men in domestic roles. I think it's also interesting to show how they can care, give, shop, clean, so that the gap moves from 47 to 27. We shift that a little bit. We have the full report for you. You could scan this, and of course, that'll be shared with all of you as well. And thank you very much. And I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Gitanjali. Can I request a special memento of Voice of Change by the Plated Project as a token of our appreciation? Thank you once again, Gitanjali, for those insightful findings, which just shows that how important these conversations are. While the results are very encouraging, it just shows that the conversations need to go on. To further explore these findings through the perspectives of creativity, marketing, entertainment, and social impact, we now move into a panel discussion featuring an outstanding group of leaders from across industries. May I begin by inviting our first panelist, actor, entrepreneur, and founder of Working Panda Films, Ahana Kumra, known for her fearless roles across theatre, film, and digital platforms. Next, please welcome one of India's most celebrated creative leaders driving culture-shaping brand work, Pallavi Chakravarti, founder and chief creative officer, Fundamental. Our next panelist is a transformational marketer dedicated to purpose-led communication, Puneet Bekal, executive vice president and chief marketing officer, HDFC Securities. Next, please join me in welcoming Sanjay Singh, Chief UNICEF Maharashtra, who brings over 26 years of leadership in humanitarian and development programs that advance equity for children. Pavanjit Bedi, CMO HUL Foods, unfortunately couldn't make it today due to a last-minute emergency. Moderating today's discussion on the next chapter of inclusive storytelling, from progress to possibility, is someone who has been one of the driving forces behind this movement since its inception. Please welcome Neena Ilavia Jaipuria.
So thank you everyone for being part of the roundtable discussion. And we just heard Gitanjali, share with us the research insights, which of course tell us that a lot has been done, but of course a lot remains to be done. And I think the discussion is really about how do we challenge the existing gender norms, the deep-rooted biases that still continue to exist and be showcased in the content and the advertising that we are creating. And I must tell you guys that this panel's not been rehearsed, so they don't know what I'm going to ask them at all. And so we are really here, and I want to say this because this is what we do at every road show when we go to an agency. We talk about the real challenges, There are real challenges, and it's not like we don't want to do what we want to do and we want to do it right. But there are, real challenges, and how do we overcome some of those challenges to ensure that we, start portraying balanced representations, authentic ones, mindful ones, more gender sensitized. So we noticed that, the gaps are shifting, and we noticed parenting roles are getting, are joined now. But we still notice that women are significantly more likely to be appearing in domestic roles, cleaning, cooking, caregiving, parenting, and men are more and more likely to be shown in paid occupations and workspaces. So really, disparities continue, they persist, and we need to challenge those gender norms. So Pallavi, let's start with you. Okay. And since you are representing in the advertising agency world, which is pretty much the creator world of the ads, where do you think lies the challenge? What is that challenge? And why is it that we've not been able to kind of circumvent it, overcome it? I'll come to the how later. But where do you think this challenge lies? And I'm saying this because, there is an advertiser and an agency relationship that creates a brand. So I'm wondering, where is it getting stuck? Where is the challenge?
Okay, I think there's two kinds of work that answers or tries to bridge this gap. And I can broadly bucket it like it's either a sledgehammer or it's drip irrigation, okay? And sledgehammers are the ones that come out and tell people, you're doing this wrong. Don't look at women like this. She should be driving. She should be doing, earning things. She should not be in the kitchen, right? So these are the kind of initiatives you'll find more or less around Mother's Day, Father's Day, Women's Day, every day, right? Whatever the calendar throws at you, we've got initiatives coming up for that, and those are sledgehammers. Where I think the real challenge is that we don't have drip irrigation. So give me normalization over Andolan any day, right? So when you have normalization, that's when people start seeing it as a part of the backdrop. As used to as we are seeing a man go to work, we'll get accustomed to a woman going to work. Don't shout at me and tell me, here, look, celebrate her. She is ma and she is boss, right? It has to be beyond that. It has to be an everyday thing. That's where I think we're falling short.
So Puneet, I'll come to you. You represent the BFSI sector, and traditionally the sector has been very male-dominated, and it speaks to men as investors and sometimes women as savers, if at all. Do you think there has been a shift in the way this particular sector is now looking at their marketing, or do subtle biases still continue for a reason, of course, and we'll get to that? So what is your view on this sector?
I would not know how the sector has been panning out over the years, but if you ask me personally, and as a marketer who also is responsible for business, If you look at the entire cohorting of BFSI in general, for me, if I have to represent women in a message which seamlessly is integrated in the narrative, then it makes sense, not just for a token tick box. Okay, that's point one. I think BFSI predominantly has showcased women as a secondary decision maker, not the primary decision maker. Yeah, but I'll give you some stats which is important for most marketeers to know this, because that is when the change will happen in a manner which is more intuitive and seamless. Like for example, if you see, and the women prime credit scores are much better in India than men. The delinquency rate of women are far lesser than men. Consistency in investments is much higher in women than men. So for a marketer, it makes the best sense for me to advertise a narrative or a storytelling which is compelling for this segment, because I'm expanding reach, not making it niche. So that's why it is that. So with the numbers we're talking, and there is a market opportunity for marketers, even in a BFI segment, to build this narrative which goes gender agnostic, to be honest. So it's not for advertisers or for clients to say, you know what, hey, we want a female protagonist in the film. Yes, if it makes sense for a storytelling, yeah, why not?
That's interesting. I didn't know these scores, by the way. Wasn't aware. Sanjay, let me come to you. From your view, why is it so important for women to be shown in such a progressive way in media? And what does that do to society and future generations?
Very quickly, before I come to your question, I also bring the child rights lens. And we keep on discussing this, that why does organization like UNICEF or many people in the room exist when government is claiming that we are going to be Viksit Bharat and we are the 5th largest economy? So many of these things should be taken care by the government. And what we have realized is very clear, and this is our founding principle in UNICEF, that gender becomes a kind of non-negotiable change strategy, cross-cutting theme across the program outcomes. Whether you want the children to be healthy, whether you want the children not to be malnourished, whether you want the children to be skilled, educated, all of it. Gender plays a role across all of it. The complexity increases because it is intertwined in the social norms. That is one. And second, there is an interplay of different kind of exclusion. So for example, geographical exclusion. Maharashtra, 50% of population is urban. Mumbai, half of your population lives in slum. And in many of the slum areas where you go, if you see many of the indicators around health, education, nutrition, and compare it for the girl child, it is, and same, so that is geographical exclusion is one, and social exclusion. So people from ST community, SC community, tomorrow we are meeting the governor and we are getting the world blind cricket team who won the world championship this time. So people from the disability background. So it only makes it more complex when you walk around the issues of gender and all. And in UNICEF, we have also understood that the gender gap exists across the life cycle, even before the girl is born. How can you have a child sex ratio of 770 or 780 in the country when we are talking about living, which means you are killing your daughter till date before she is born? That's the clear inference. There's something called, I don't know how many of you are aware, there's something called sick newborn care units. It's the only unit in all district hospitals across India, and government has established it. We played our role. That any child who is born, underweight or malnourished is more likely to die if you don't provide proper care and intensive care. So these are intensive care units. If you see the admission rates in this intensive care units, you have more boy child admitted in those intensive care units than the girl child, which means there is also this bias on health seeking behavior. So we want to protect our boys, but okay, girls ka dekhenge. Coming to education, so this is survival, right? Now come to the education and learning. We are slightly doing better on the secondary education, girls are at par. But the moment you get to senior secondary and all, there are many districts still in state of progressive state like Maharashtra, wherein 70% of your adolescent population is out of school. What kind of agency and what kind of demographic dividend that we are talking about? 70% of girls out of school. You imagine the kind of future that we are discussing, the kind of hopes and aspiration they will have and all of it. And similarly, when you talk about care and protection also, in a progressive state like Maharashtra, you still have districts who have, which has a kind of child marriage rates close to 50%, which means early pregnancy, which means they are also exposed to all kind of vulnerabilities of IMR and MMR. So, and that's the background from where I would like to start. But and of course, media has a role to play. Media does shape behavior. Media guides pro-social behavior. We all, when I come out of a film hall, I watch a movie. I act like in the next 10 minutes, I'm acting like I want to dress like the protagonist of the story. I don't come out of that Amitabh Bachchan. If that is so powerful, why can't we use it in a more powerful way? Shah Rukh Khan, I remember when I was growing up, this Lux ad wherein he is talking about skincare, that was so I would call revolutionary, that a male character, and it gives a message, and this has to be kind of, so pro-social behavior is one. I think one of the things which we have also learnt in UNICEF is how do you pick up real stories of change. So there is a girl in the village who has fought child marriage against all odds. So instead of some protagonist coming from outside, why don't you take these real stories, real heroes, and we have used it very effectively in many parts of the country across. And the third area which I think we miss a lot. So when we talk about gender stereotyping and all, it's not only working with women, working with girls, but it is how do you work with boys and men. And that's another focus which in UNICEF, I think we are kind of very closely looking into it. And we are doing a immunization program in some of the urban districts, and those districts have been urban municipal corporation, wherein the immunization rates are very bad. And one of the reason is, of course, men are also responsible, because they do not believe in immunization. उनके माँ बाप ने नहीं किया है, उनको लगता है हमें क्या करना है, हमारा बाप दादा ने किया, and all of it. So they are the one who are kind of obstacle for women not coming with their children to the immunization centers and all. So how do you work with them? So we carried some social experiments and all. So some of these areas, so we will have to kind of pick these stories of hope, because many a time there is a lot of negativity around. ये नहीं हो सकता है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. But how do you propel these stories of hope against the stories of despair is something I think has worked in a better manner.
So Sanjay, to your point, in my previous role at Viacom 18, I'm sure we all know about Balika Vadhu.
Yes.
And that was one of the shows that we really created in Colors, which actually worked a whole lot in child marriage and created a very large impact in society. So we need, of course, more Balika Vadhus, but they come far and few, I must say. Bhana, now to you. I think we'll address your two roles one by one. So we'll talk about Ahana as an actor. And I know that in the past you've done very unconventional, complex roles with women with ambition. And I want to understand, how did you land there first? Did you go seeking them? Or is the industry now actually writing more progressive roles? How did that happen? How did that journey happen for you? Was that a conscious choice you made?
No, not really. I think it kind of just began with, when you come from a family. I came from a city called Lucknow. My mother is a police officer. My father's in pharmaceuticals. Nobody in my family has ever even stepped on a film set. They had no idea what a film set was. Of course, my introduction to cinema was a big thanks to, being a part of this city, where I think you cannot escape cricket or cinema. Mumbai brings these two apart from monsoons. This is the, these are the three most important things of being, in the ecosystem of being a part of Mumbai. And I think I was just, I think it was, when you have the right intent, I think the intent finds you. I've always been a believer of that, Nina. So, I started my career in advertising, and I'd left everything about advertising, and here I am, back after all these years. My first internship, in fact, was at Low, and I was working there for almost a year, and I was part of so many ad films, and I saw so much, when I was working as an intern there. And then years later, when I went to film school, I had the good fortune to be the student to Nasiruddin Shah and to Ratna Pathak Shah and to Makaran Deshpande. And these are very progressive people. Like, they don't look at cinema in a very small way, or they don't like to. In fact, we were always pushed, I think, in film school to think beyond the obvious. Nasir sir, in fact, I give him the most amount of credit, and Ratna for that matter, because when I started doing theatre with them in 2009 or 2008, that's when I started doing theatre professionally. And, Ratna would always make me think. She's like, don't think just because you're doing this job as a woman, you have to think about it in this certain way. So I think a lot has to do with, the gender roles that these women have played in my life very early on. Whether it was my mother. My mother was never home when I was growing up. With 3 of us, I have an elder sister, and she's a bodybuilder. My brother lives away. But, like my sister and I have been brought up in a way where we were never allowed to stay home. My father lived in Russia. So my mother was, and a police officer handling 3 crazy children at home. We were brought up by nannies. I did not see my mother while growing up. In fact, I was one of those kids whose hair was cut short because my mother did not have time ki guth bando, uptan lagao, all that. No, we were given one lath on our bums and been like, bhago, school bhago, basketball khelo, swimming classes jao. So my sister and I fortunately have been brought up in a way where we were, we were fighting our own battles right from the word go. And I think the same thing has happened when I have now become an industry professional. And when I landed, I think my first film was Lipstick Under My Burqa. And it only happened because somebody called me and they said they want to audition me for this one part, And I was already doing a show with Mr. Bachchan called Yudh. I was playing his daughter. That was my debut on Sony Television years ago in 2013. And I kid you not, when I read the script of Lipstick Under My Burqa, I thought the director was either crazy or I was going to get burnt alive in my house because, she was trying to normalize the word sex in Hindi cinema, in mainstream Hindi cinema. I was like, bhai, mere ghar mein to 100% koi aake kerosene छिड़क के जाएगा और मेरा सती होने वाला है. But the film got made. And the film got made with a Ratna, with a Konkana, with a Plabita, with me, with Vikrant. And we shot it in Bhopal. And when I remember our first premiere happened in Tokyo, we walked the red carpet with Shinzo Abe and Meryl Streep right in front of us. Meri life mein maine nahi socha tha I'll get to see Meryl Streep and Shinzo Abe at like that proximity. And the film got screened in Tokyo, and we hadn't watched the film before that. We also had to fight a battle in India because it was censored in India and it was banned in India because of apparently sexual noises that the film had, because there was a scene where somebody masturbated and there was orgasm. Ratna had a scene like that. And there was, of course, explicit sex because women were talking openly about sexuality in that film. But, for me, the penny actually dropped when we were standing, and in Japan what happens is कि वो लोग आपके साथ photographs नहीं लेते हैं. They come and they take autographs from you, So we have to stand as like filmmakers. We all stand in one line. And once the screening is over, people come and they either hug you, they congratulate you. And the Japanese audience is a very nice audience, They are not like, हमारी तरह नहीं है जो दिल खोल के हंसते हैं. They like laugh also. If there's something really funny, they'll go like, So we were very confused during the screening. We were like, have they liked the film? Have they hated it? Because I loved the film when I watched it. And there was this one particular lady, I remember, from the audience, who came and she tightly hugged Alankrita, my director. And she said, I cannot believe you've told our story. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm talking like this is Japan, this is Tokyo, this is like, these guys even in 2009, they are like in 2047 or something like that, like they're so ahead of their time. But when we went ahead with that film, because that film went to about 21 film festivals, I traveled 5 countries with that film. And we screened that film in Australia, UK, Tokyo, Japan, we went to America, and this became a pattern where women would come to us and they would cry and they would say things like, how did you tell our story? I'm like, how is a story that's based in Bhopal making sense to somebody sitting in America or in Japan, or what is happening? And that confused me. And that's when I think things started making sense to me, and I'm very grateful that the first job that I ever did in cinema was that, where I realized that women really want their stories out. And, and it only makes sense if we make more ferocious and more fearless cinema like this. And after that, it's just been, I think, it's the same thing that has happened to me where, the work has just kind of attached to me because I feel like there's a voice that needs to be, I want to be able to have that kind of footprint in cinema where I want to be able to talk very proudly about my work. And, I think that has happened, thankfully, in my career so far.
So we'll come back to you, Hannah, but right now I want to go back to drip irrigation. and I really want to understand that conceptually. I want to understand what that really means, because I think when we look at the challenge, it needs to be broken up from a brief stage to a scripting stage, to a casting stage, to a production stage. And how do you apply this irrigation process across this whole campaign making process to ensure that we are challenging the gender norms?
Okay, so there's no formula. Cannot be, because then we'd be going the other way, right? The opposite of feminism is in male bashing. So there is no formula. You have to take it brief by brief, right? So I think it's also very important to know that we're not artists. We're in this business, we're commercial artists. So you have to have a business outcome,
of course,
attached, right, to what it is that you're going to put out. So what I meant by drip irrigation is that a subtle way to plant what you want to say without making a morcha out of it, right? And I think now, here again, this is where the business outcome comes in. I remember an ad for Citroën, right, where a woman is driving her son to school or wherever. That's it. It's a potholed road, right? And she's got a bad back. And then, of course, there's a huge 38-second product window, which is fine. But the woman is just driving her kid to school. There's no outlier outside of that, right? It's not a huge message. Oh, look, there goes a woman behind the wheel. Oh, let's break the stereotype with a BRAKE. None of that, right? It's just, utke, she got up and decided that today she's driving her kid. So that is drip irrigation, right? I think we do ourselves a disservice when, and someone here mentioned, I think it's very important, it's also where you show women, also where you don't show them, where you show men, where you don't show them. So a man in the kitchen, for instance, is perfectly normal. I remember a Surf Excel ad, right, where the guy was just tinkering at the washing machine. His kid came in from football and he happened to be the parent at the washing machine. So he used the detergent and her messy jersey was cleaned, right? And there was banter between the father and daughter, right? It could just as easily have been the mother. It could just as easily have been the man behind the wheel, right? So this easy fluidity, this interchangeability, right? That is drip irrigation, where you're not poking a finger in somebody's eye and say, look, this woman drives. Look, that man uses the washing machine, right? They just do, right? So when you're writing for it, I'll give you an example of an Airtel Wi-Fi ad we did. When it went into research, post-production, we got some accolades from the client saying, ये तो हमने सोचा ही नहीं था, but so many people are saying, अरे वाह, the boy is doing a cookery show and the girl is gaming. So it's not like we thought about it, yeah. Nobody, you don't sit in an agency and say, you show a girl gaming to the progressive chappad will fado. You don't do that. We just cast them in roles where we think people should be, right? Girls game, boys watch cookery shows. A man was sitting around the house, vela, and watching the match. His wife was doing the meeting, right? It's fine. There will be a time when the man will be doing the meeting, right? It's just that you need to be somewhere, and I think it happens. There's a switch that gets thrown, right, in which you start seeing people in all their shades and all the things that they do. If that can translate, right, then you're home, That's what you'll achieve over a window of, say, for the next baseline that's done. If people start seeing more of men and women doing all the things that traditionally only men did or women did, right? That's where the real difference will come in. So that is when you're conceptualizing, when you're casting. Casting is a totally different ballgame. I'll come back to that later, right? Oh my God. But outside of that, if you think about it like normal life, or whatever you have known of normal life, I think the responsibility that the ad agency and the marketer has, right, together, is to not overcorrect, but be cognizant that there is a more balanced way of presenting life.
So that's exactly my point. That isn't there required, therefore, a conscious effort to apply that lens, because there are such unconscious biases, and I can talk about as many ads that you've just spoken about, which say that ladke ko cricket bat diya
correct.
or
Absolutely.
ladki ko
Absolutely.
teddy bear de diya.
Correct.
She's got a soft toy for some reason, and these are really unconscious biases, because that is normal. That was normal life, and those are the normal norms. But like Gitanjali was saying, without being prescriptive, how can we still make some conscious gender decisions while making these ads, is the question. Because I understand normal, but the problem is normal is not this. ये 10 ad में से ये एक ही ad में ऐसा मिलेगा आपको.
Correct.
So, but the challenge is without being prescriptive, because I know we went to one agency where they said, if you show us so many do's and don'ts, and then you're putting us into a box, and you want us to then think out of the box. So we said, okay, we cannot definitely be prescriptive about this. But the point is, if you're not consciously addressing this issue, I have a feeling only 1 out of 10 ads will do what you're talking about.
But the reality is, I think it becomes a sort of muscle memory. It's just a matter of making the start. Okay, and I do think, because it's not like in my agency, nobody sits around and says, let's gender correct this ad now that we've written it. We don't. It is just written that way because people have started thinking a certain way, right? The first thing you do when you cast a man is not, or a teenage boy is not put a bat in his hand, right? That's not how you've just stopped thinking like that, right? And yeah, maybe that takes some doing.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think we have come a long way. Yeah? I mean, look, I remember I'm scarred by one ad. Okay. Like when I was in my early years, I remember, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people in this room remember this. There's a random woman in a Baywatch red bikini emerging from the ocean. Everything's popping out. And the voiceover, she's just looking like this into the camera, like not just smiling beatifically. And the voiceover says, Vishwas hai. इसमें कुछ खास है. And then wait for the kicker. After that, the logo, JK Cement. So we've come a very long way. Yeah. Somebody stop thinking like that. That's how people used to think. Nobody knows why JK Cement में क्यों है वो औरत? Why is she looking at you like she's saying come hither? Why is she wearing a bikini? Nobody knows. That was also an ad. Right? And there were many like that back in the day. So you found, there has been, now you know not to. Now you know not to put a girl in like a client will come on set and say, no, please, hemline. Lots of people are doing that because you know not to. So these are things that are, once you pick it up, I think it stays with you. Then you don't need to, it's a switch.
It's a switch that, okay. Puneet, coming back to you, is there a campaign that you can think of today where we've tried to make investing more accessible and relatable to women without compromising, the business outcomes that Pallavi was talking about? Because, very often when we've spoken to categories that are kind of male-dominated, say even the automobile industry, and I remember the gentleman telling me that if I put a woman at the wheel, my sales will plummet because all the men will think that this is a car meant for women. So I really can't have a woman driver at the wheel. And we really debated this for so long, Puneet. I think 6 months later, I went back and told him, I said, why can't you actually produce the same ad twice with a male driver and a woman driver? And then figure it out. So from your perspective for BFSI, is there something like that which doesn't, of course, compromise? Because, of course, business outcomes are real and have to be met. But how can you still overcome the gender norm on this?
So I'll just take 2 points from Anna and from Pallavi. So one is on the drip irrigation versus sledgehammer, right? Now, for a marketer like me, mental availability, which is basically how much stickiness the ad gives in the audience's mind, is extremely important from awareness to the full funnel. Now, for that to happen, there are two ways to do it. Okay? One is the drip irrigation, one is the sledgehammer format. Now, in sledgehammer, what happens is you remember the identity of the protagonist, but don't remember the brand particularly.
Very often, yeah.
Whereas, I'll go back to Anna's point, where if your intent is right, the intent comes to you. Which means that if you are building a narrative which is gender agnostic, but the message is delivered, then automatically the consumers come to you. Now, there is a scientific evidence of 5-year study done by Oxford Said Business, which says a well-crafted inclusive ad. Now, the word well-crafted is extremely important, not the JK cement, right? A well-crafted inclusive ad has over 5 years given higher retention rates, higher loyalty coefficients, higher affinity, and higher brand recall. This is proven, marketing science over 5 years of work across different continents. Now, if you add to the current market scenario of the addressable market, which is basically younger millennials and the Gen Zs. Look at the way the Gen Zs look at every communication and every brand. Their antenna of being authentic is much more sharper than all of us in this room. They are able to filter out what is authentic and what is not. Their definition of inclusion is much more granular than what it used to be. It's not just, okay, just put a woman on the ad. What is her role, which is alignment with the message which the brand is going to put forward, is their question. And more, as because of climate and everything is happening around the world, value purchase is becoming a majority behavior, not a minority behavior. With all of this into consideration, irrespective whether in BFSI or cosmetics or in food and beverage, it makes sense for business owners to look at inclusivity from a point of view as to how the message sticks. So that's where my point is. Specifically at the work which we do on investments, if you see our recent ads, I'll give you an example. It's actually a very insightful number crunching which I did yesterday night. So we have 3 ads which we did, out of which one ad specifically is a girl who talks about brokerage rates. Now, I don't remember any discussion between us and the creative team as to whether it should be a boy or a girl. But when it was narrated, we all felt good and said, yes, it sticks, man. Because it sticks, the message sticks. Now, out of the 3 ads, the highest VTR rate is that ad. Yeah. The second thing which we have realized is, in that A/B testing we did in different geographies, which you can download to digital media, not only the existing customers' ARPU has increased after seeing the ad, the conversion rate from that ad is much higher than the other 3 ads. Right? Now, I'll give you another example. Specifically in the 18 to 25 segment, understanding investment is extremely important.
Yeah.
We created a Skylearn series of 230 odd videos.
Yes, I saw some.
Yeah. Now, out of those, and we made a point that we wanted credible faces. Not celebrity faces, credible faces who can make sense and can deliver boring financial knowledge in a engaging format. Now, out of those 10 influencers, 6 of them are women. It was not out of, it just happened that when we were looking through through their work, we felt that these women can do a much better job than the rest. Right. So yeah, that's where it is at.
Fantastic. And the fact is that you've proven the business outcome, which is, more often than not, and Pallavi, I wanted to, come back to you on that, because sometimes when you want to do the right thing, you are almost delivering a social message which then comes at, the cost of that business outcome. And that's a very balanced act that you will have to play.
Absolutely.
And has that ever happened with you at work?
Actually, there have been times when we've tried to push, and now I can maybe come back to the casting conversation, right? So there are times when you've tried to push a certain, you want to push a little bit because people aren't perfect, right? Women don't always get out of bed looking like they've walked off a catwalk, right? It's very difficult to reconcile that for certain categories, right? So if I'm talking soap, right? I will harm myself and immolate, but nobody at the other side of the table will say, it's okay to have someone who's not 10 on 10 looking, right? They won't do it.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a reality. And I've had very frank conversations with my clients on this, right? To the extent that sometimes it's even, there's a regional divide as well, right? I mean, I've had very clear, like, frank conversations where people have said, yaar, north mein yahi bikega. What do you do? Like, you know, and these are realities born of years of, you know, market visits and research and things. So there, in that kind of situation, how do you start? Where do you chip away? How can you?
Yeah.
So these are nuanced issues.
No,
right?
but they also have a direct business outcome. So
yes.
if
so
you
I'm saying
didn't,
your
sales of the north would actually plummet.
Might plummet.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be at the receiving end of that. So you have to tread carefully. I also think that there are worlds, okay? There's a woman's world, there's a man's world, traditionally, right? There is the world of edible oils, and there's the world of cookware, and there's the world of, you know, baby products, and there's the world of cosmetics. That's a woman's world. Then there was finance, then there was automotive, there is the man's world, right? But there is a sea in between. In today's world, if you have, not only are these two, not only are the two universes at the ends of the spectrum changing, there's huge, what about mattresses? Men and women both sleep.
What about?
Mattresses, you know what I'm saying? What about electricals?
Yeah.
You know, I need a light bulb as much as my partner, you know? So what happens to all those categories?
Yeah.
That's where, you know, you may not be able to make gargantuan steps on something which is the toughest pillar.
Right.
But you can start making a change towards normalcy in a lot of others, right?
Sure.
If I see resistance, even in a category where it doesn't matter, you know, where
then you will.
Then you can push.
Yeah.
Then you can push back.
Right.
But if there's something which is directly, okay, no, a man has to be, like you said, right? People will think this is a car for women and there goes the neighborhood, right? What do you do? Then yes, you have to find solves. If you're actually committed to the cause, you'll find a way to start pushing. Now you also have the liberty of not doing one hero asset and having your whole world living around that. You can have many conversations, different touch points, weave in ways to bring the conversation more equitably. But some categories it's tougher than others.
You know, Pallavi, I actually saw a Harley Davidson ad. I was driving through Prabhadevi. On the left side, there was a hoarding with the bike, a male biker. The right side had a female biker. And as much as it is a tough category, as you would imagine,
Correct.
It was such a beautiful solve because you saw the male and the female, you know.
Where there's a will.
And where is exactly. So I was just going to come that it's about conviction, even in those categories. Ahana, back to you. You've, you know, now through Working Panda films, you've moved from interpreting roles as an actor to actually writing them and scripting them. Was there a mindset shift when you did that in terms of, you know, writing roles that are representative much before the actor comes on stage?
I don't think I've ever, you know, the thing is that because of my work so early on with the male gaze being not such a specific thing, and thank God for that, because at least the collaborators I have worked with in the past and I continue to work with have always been very pro not gender biased, you know, and I think whether it's the stage, because on stage, when I've been on stage for 25 years, and I don't think the stage cares very early on if you want to be an artist in, you know, in that world. When I started moving from acting into producing, and I think for me it was a very organic shift, because I think I have always wanted to produce and tell stories that I want to tell, and I want to be a part of those narratives, because I feel that even though OTT and cinema have moved towards this whole thing where the male gaze is not very important, you know, like the female gaze is also very important, the female perspective is very important. I mean, I know that it's not as difficult as advertising, because in advertising I've seen that, you know, although I know that they are pushing the boundaries and they're pushing the envelopes and they're pushing everything, you know, and I know it's hard because the clients come with a certain set of ideas, you know, कि like ये गाड़ी सिर्फ बंदा चला सकता है, या फाइनेंस की बात सिर्फ बंदा कर सकता है, और जब appliances खरीदे जाते हैं तो सिर्फ, you know, the man brings out the credit card. But in cinema also we were told these things, and I remember having these conversations with many female women directors, you know, where they said that it's very hard for us to push films with women as the center point or as the central character, because eventually the subscriptions that are coming through, and maximum almost 80%, if you may not want to agree to this, but it's actually true if you see that jitne bhi, you know, if you go see an Indian household, the male pays from his credit card the subscriptions. So if a cricket match is coming and the woman wants to watch something else, she still has to watch the cricket match or watch FIFA World Cup or watch something else which the man wants to watch in the house. There are many times when a family outing happens and the father of the house or the male in the house decides kaun si film dekhne jayenge over the weekend. A woman might want to watch a female-centric film, but the man wants to go watch Welcome to the Jungle. So what do? You know, so you have to sometimes adhere to those kind of gender norms, even in cinema. So these are conversations that we had, and you know, and this deep conditioning, you know, like I remember, like actually lipstick was a very pivotal and important part of my understanding of myself as a woman in cinema, because our panel included a Konkana and a Ratna and me and Alankrita, and you know, we all spoke about, like I remember in press conference we spoke about like why are sanitary napkins to be bought with the brown paper bag. I swear to God, I had not thought of this. I'm talking about like when I was almost like, I think this was when I'm 26 or 27. And I was like, for 27 years, I have never questioned this. Why am I so embarrassed of my own period? You know, why can't I talk about periods, you know, out there? You know, why? It's a normal thing. Everybody goes through periods. But, you know, these are things that you don't realize how deep conditioned you are to start thinking about these things. Or for that matter, even like on a set, on a film set, when you get a period, it's not easy to tell a male director ki, sir, my stomach's hurting and I'm getting a cramp and I need to go to the vanity and I need to change a pad. You know, you would always like do khuspus to your hairdresser. The hairdresser will do khuspus to like an assistant who's a woman, and then eventually it will reach the EP, you know. So it's like mar ke that conversation goes. But this has taken a long time, even for people like us to understand that, listen, what I'm talking about is not embarrassing. This is just normal human like body, and treat women. So I think that's where I have moved towards. When now I take on this role as a producer, I look at like my creative director in my company is a woman, and I want to be able to bring as many women in the workforce as I can, because I know how hard it is to make Hindi films or be a part of cinema where it's 80% workforce is men and literally 20% is women. So I want to be able to kind of be able to do that bit from my end. So I think that's where the stories come from.
But to your point on the sanitary pads, I'm sure there'll be a discussion later, but there are brands now, by the way, who are involving men in the purchase. And if you've noticed, some of those brands are extremely progressive from that perspective. Sanjay, coming to you. You know, each of us has always had one particular personal moment or event in our lives which ends up being a turning point on how you want to change a certain thing and how you'd like to perceive women in content. Could you share something like that with us? You've been on the field a lot, more than any of us actually.
So since Anna spoke about her experiences of Bhopal, let me take example from Madhya Pradesh, and that was a life-turning moment for me. We were working in Jhabua, which is a very tribal-dominated district of Madhya Pradesh, and we were doing a research on adolescent empowerment. We wanted to understand what are the aspirations of youth in tribal area and all of it, and you would be surprised. And I'm just giving you a snapshot, I can't get into details. But in one line, the expectation of both father and mother from their adolescent child, if it was a boy, tell me what would be their expectation? Engineer, job hua main engineer. कि कमाने कब जाएगा? So the only expectation both mom and dad has कि ये लड़का है कमाने क्या जाएगा, और अगर लड़की है तो क्या होगा, शादी कब होगी. What aspiration, choices, क्या क्या हम लोग बोल रहे हैं, है नहीं. आप देखो absence of this is mom and dad. Now come to boys and girls. So we spoke to the adolescent boys. I said क्या है aspiration भाई, क्या करना चाहते हो, क्या दिखता है. उसका aspiration है to, because Jhabua is bordering Gujarat. So his aspiration is to migrate to Gujarat and work as a laborer, as a driver. वो aspiration है. Girls, it is very difficult even to get out from them कि उनका कोई role model नहीं आसपास. The only thing which they have seen is the school teacher and वो lady police. और पुलिस मतलब सिपाही पुलिस. वो SP और DSP तक पहुंचा नहीं वहाँ पे. So this is the kind of aspiration, choices, all of it that we are talking about. It is completely different world. And we spoke about parenting and we continued this discussion. We have done a extensive research on parenting and just a snapshot of it. So it is very paradoxical. So moms or mothers in parenting, they are very, very high on parenting load and very low on decision making, right? अब बाप पे चले जाओ. Very high on decision making and very low on parenting. बच्चे पे चले जाओ, बहुत स्मार्ट है वो. मतलब शहर का बच्चा, गांव का बच्चा, हमारे जैसे पेरेंट्स के बच्चे, उन्होंने बड़ा स्मार्टली बोला दिस, ऑल ऑफ देम सेड, एंड आई एम टॉकिंग इन नटसेल, कि फादर इज ए एब्सेंट पेरेंट बट ए फन पेरेंट. तो मस्ती करवाना है तो पापा के पास और उधर, और उनको मालूम है किसके पास कब जाना है. सो व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट ऑल दिस एस्पिरेशन एंड ऑल, इट हैज़ टू बी इन ए कॉन्टेक्स्ट. यू नो ये नहीं करना, फिर भी कहते हो बच्ची का शादी नहीं करना. किसको नॉलेज नहीं है भाई 18 साल में? क्यों कर रहे हैं? बिकॉज देयर इज ए कम्युनिटी नाउ. 60-70% of daughters are getting married, so I am expected, and I have visited communities wherein कुछ उल्टा सीधा हो गया तो the गांव प्रधान and the local heroes and the मुखिया, they come and tell you that you are acting very smart. I told you ये लफड़ा होगा, अभी हो गया, तो उसको एकदम ostracize करते. तो who has that what do you call जिगरा and courage to go against the community now? अभी मालूम है कि ये करना चाहिए, नहीं कर रहे. Cigarette smoking is injurious to health. I am aware, but I smoke, right? So just information or throwing information is not going to change behavior. Of course, I think what we have realized in UNICEF is that media and advertisement and all of it are important partners, but in isolation, nobody can achieve the kind of outcomes that we are talking about. So you have to work at individual level. You will have to work at family level. You have to work on community norms. And that's not enough. You have to work with the institutional structure. So you create what you call demand for services, but the service providers are not able to provide that quality service. Do you think that this change is going to happen? And finally, of course, at the policy level and all, you have a lot of incentives for girl child and all of the. So all of this in totality will bring about the change that we are talking about.
No, it has to, Sanjay, and I because I've been in the media for over 2 decades or even more, I still want to refute the fact that media has long-lasting impacts in mindset shifts, and we'll argue till the cows come home on that of this panel. But I still believe that we do have a very, very, very deep impact on mind shifts, beliefs, and expectations. So I think on lack of time, and before I open it to the audience, there's one question I want to ask each of you. If there was one stereotype that you would want to kind of remove from Indian advertising forever, what would that be? That one stereotype. Anybody wants to go first?
Yeah, so I have this very interesting point. Okay, so if you look at all the CTAs in most advertising, which is call to action, he always has a male baritone or a male rich voice, which is the likes of Amitabh Bachchan, and all that, right?
Yeah.
Now there's a peer-set review, again, last 7 years review, done on radio listeners around the world. It clearly says that when a general, neutral, low-pitched CTA in the range of 140 to 148 hertz has got the highest impact on the affinity towards the brand and persuasion towards action. So I want to experiment that. So this entire fallacy that we all have, that when a male baritone tells you what to do, you immediately do it, needs to be falsified.
Any of you want to go for it?
I think mothers should be less long suffering. Right from the time of Nirupa Roy, we've had long-suffering mothers. And I think advertising does a fair share of propagating of that. That I would remove, if I
I
could.
think I'll go by your example. इसमें कुछ खास है और जान है. ये क्या relation है भाई?
Which day? See, 20 years later, I remember it. Wow.
So that should go. That
Yeah,
goes to-
revealing clothing
Correct,
and
correct.
objectification.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and there is no relation between the messaging and what is being said.
You know, if you ask me, and Hana, you'll go last on this one. We were in Hyderabad and we were talking to one of the film producers there, and I asked him, "Item number क्यों करते हैं आप? Why do you have item numbers in your films?" And he, without batting an eyelid, he said to me, "Box office कौन देखेगा? आप तो question पूछ के चले जाओगे. Box office का क्या होगा?" That same gentleman, but I must tell you, called me 6 months later and said, "Madam, ये picture देखिए, उसमें item number नहीं है." And he remembered me for whatever it's worth. I don't care what that was, but the fact that he remembered this and he made a conscious effort to have a movie without one, it takes jigra, जैसे आपने बोला, it takes guts.
After burqa wala movie, I was in Bhopal that day. We were watching that film, and after every scene, अभी सोच रहे कि यहाँ पे हंगामा क्यों नहीं रहा? How did the director could make it? And we were like and in a place like Bhopal.
Yeah. No, anything for you?
I mean, of course, I've been following everything that has been happening in advertising, but I instead of, I think, pulling it down, I want to really actually applaud it. Because I really feel advertising over a period of time, maybe in these 20 years, since when I left advertising as an intern to what it is today, I think it's really pushed the envelope to quite an extent. And I agree with you that it has a lasting impression. Like, we'll all still remember Kuch Khas Hai, the jingle from Cadbury. So I really feel like advertising has left a certain impact, and I think they are really pushing the envelope with the Share the Load ad, which is one of my favorite ads in the recent
And Josie's
times.
here to talk about it.
Yeah, really, that ad, like, it's fantastic, because now I just give all the clothes to my boyfriend and I tell him, please run the machine and share the load. I literally quote that at home. So, it happens. But coming to, I think from advertising, I just think in cinema, I still feel like there is a lot to push, and I really hope they stop making cinema or films and OTT shows with 4 women having shots and seeing naked boys, because that's really not what women are all about. And I really want to be able to push that envelope in cinema. That's where I'm at, and I really want to, first of all, applaud each and everybody in this room. I know you guys have really pushed the envelope in advertising, and really...
Let's do that. Let's applaud.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Kuch Khas Hai, by the way, came back many years later with a woman cricketer at the pitch.
Yes, I know.
That was fantastic. I mean, that really blew my mind. So with that, any questions from the audience? Right away.
To Ahana, you moved from advertising to films. Like you said, OTT. We all thought OTT would come out of the box and say a story differently, portray women differently, but it's not happened. What you said is very right. You want to show a liberated woman, then you show her with a drink in her hand, with a cigarette in her hand, and eyeing boys. Where do you think that change will come, that producers or actors will start thinking differently and portray women who actually are real women in this world, who are doing much better jobs?
When they start moving out of cafes in Bandra and stop making those films there, quite honestly, the problem begins there. My mother's in the police, she has worked as a DSP, she's been in the CBI 12 years. I have had times when I have had no contact with my mother for five days. And my father never used to live with us. He used to live in Russia, and there were times when I had no idea where my mother was. She would make one call a day, and that I'm talking about when mobiles were really not like Instagram, WhatsApp, and whatever. And I have seen at grassroots level, women in politics. I have seen women in police, in army, in the Air Force. In fact, I was just sharing with them, I remember when we had that little Zoom call. When they stop making films like Alpha, and they stop having this whole thing of women wearing short clothes and, doing this whole action sequence, I really think that's the problem. Because I've had really I've had the good fortune because of my work or whatever it is, it takes me and makes me meet so many people across, women from across the different walks of life, where you can make an espionage film with a woman, who could be sitting and looking just like you and making those decisions. You don't have to wear the shorts and do alpha, Like really, they need to start getting out of those little cocoons they are living in and actually see people for who they are. You could be a hero and you could look absolutely normal. So if they can normalize women and not sexualize them all the time, where a woman is supposed to look a certain type, is supposed to be a certain body type, and how can you not? Indira Gandhi was one of the biggest examples that we had as a prime minister, and she was a woman and she led a country. So why is it that we are only talking about women in cinema or in advertising where they're trying to box them? They really need to step out of those little cafes and really move out into the country and see that there are heroes who wear salwar kameez and can wear a sari and can, be in normal formals and just talk business and really bring those stories in the front, as a front runner.
If I may, I remember from my growing up years, there was a serial that captured exactly what she's talking. Absolutely. Udan, right? So if we could do it in the time of Doordarshan, I don't see why we can't do it now.
But they tried to do that with Delhi Crime, They did that with Delhi Crime, with Shefali, leading the entire narrative.
But television hasn't grown from that women's stereotype. Yeah. That is the issue.
And films are even worse because films just want...
Malika Vadhu happened. After that, nothing has happened in television.
You have to keep trying. Yeah. We have to keep trying. We have to keep challenging the norms. We have to keep pushing the envelope. We have to make a conscious decision. We have to use the gender lens, and we'll have to make that happen. And hopefully, 5 years later, in a panel discussion like this, we're probably not talking about stereotypes anymore, and we're talking about how life is so normal and gender is so balanced. So thank you very much. I know we have lots of questions. By the way, I didn't finish my own questions. So maybe we'll take them all offline. But thank you very much for your time. It was really a very engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists for an extremely engaging and enlightening discussion. May I now call upon Mr. Sam Balsara, Chairman, Madison Communication and IAA, and Ramesh Narayan, Founder, Canco Advertising and IAA Managing Committee Member, for presenting special mementos to our panelists. Thank you once again to all our esteemed panelists. It is now my privilege to invite Bo Baisker, Chief of Resource Mobilization and Partnerships, UNICEF India, for delivering his special remarks. Bo brings extensive global experience in helping forge collaborations that create lasting impact for children and communities around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bo Baisker.
Thank you. I almost forgot my glasses. It's a bit tough following such an act like that, because that was very entertaining and informative and enlightening. So thank you for that. I'm another one of these people from UNICEF. I joined a couple of years ago. So I merged into this conversation that we're having. And we already had the project. It had already started through the leadership of Megha and Nina and Gitanjali and Kavita from our team and lots of other good people. And I have to say that when I came in and we had the first conversation, I was so impressed with the whole concept of it all, right? And so necessary a conversation for sure. But I was so impressed with the way that we had approached it, and the way that we're going about it, and the way that we're still going about it. And what I really love about it, and as a partnership manager in UNICEF, and not as a child rights specialist or a social behavior change specialist, is the way that it's driven by the industry, right? UNICEF is there as a knowledge partner, sure. We're happy to help, we'll do what we can. But it's not us that are driving it, right? We didn't invent it. We don't bring people together. The IAA brings people together, right? So it's the business sector that is identifying this as an opportunity, as a challenge, as an opportunity. And you're also reflecting on your current practices. You're saying, well, okay, so this is how we do, and this may not be the best way of doing it. Maybe there's a different way that we can go about these things. Maybe there is room for a little bit of change, if you will, right? And then just very happy to see, and then again, UNICEF is there for sure, to see those creative changes that are being made, right? And to see how that all comes together into a conversation that we have today. And as you said, and we spoke about it in the break, Magna, there's been so much change over the past couple of years in the ads. And I'm new to India, but I also see these ads with women driving cars in the breaks, the hydration breaks of the soccer matches, right? The Mahindra cars, EV6 and EV9 electric cars and all that stuff. And it's a woman driving it. And I'm thinking it's probably also a woman buying it. And I was just Googling to see, so do women buy cars in India, or is it only men? Because it does sound like it's only men buying cars. And it is the majority of cars being bought, new cars being bought by men. But women buying cars are up 3 times over the past couple of years. So there is a change, right? There's a behavioral change. There may be also a contextual change and a social change. And there's also financial change, right? Because women get more money, and women have more money, women make their own decisions and so on. And the way that trickles down into how we then show that to our children. I'm a father of 2 girls, young ladies, maybe I should say, young women. And certainly I'm not going to come and tell them to do anything, right? They have it all figured out, and it'll be fine, which is just amazing. I also love the change in the voice for change, because change is just a constant in our lives, right? And it feels like every generation probably feels, oh, it's changing too much. No other generation have lived in times like this, but obviously they have. Right? It's just our change. But change can go either way, right? It could be change that isn't really what we wanted, or it could be change that goes the right way. And this is really the point where we say this is change for good. This is change that makes sense for us. It makes sense for the society that we're in. It makes sense for the development that this society is moving through, right? The amount of wealth, the amount of change that's coming into India, it demands this kind of dialogue, and it demands this kind of change, right? And it also takes time, and that's fair. We're talking about the context that we're in. I'm a product of my parents, their beliefs, their value systems, and my children will be, and so on. So it takes a little time. It's not going to happen overnight or in the next couple of years, but we can already see it. We can already see that there are contours of this change taking place. It's also not just an Indian conversation, is it? It's a global conversation. We're in India, we're talking about India, and the references you have are the Indian ads. I'm sure we all know Coca-Cola ads or whatever, right? And we can have seen some of that changes. Nowhere is this perfect, right? Some places maybe a little better, some places probably a lot worse. Nowhere is it perfect. And it goes up and down, and it works and swerves and so on, right? But the dialogue is here. The dialogue is here. And we're so happy to be part of it, because we're also part of and some of you are working agencies, you're part of global networks, huge conglomerates, I'm sure, and so is UNICEF. So we're super happy to be part of this conversation, and to take some of these insights and some of these knowledge and some of these learnings that we get from this project, and share that with our own network across other countries. So that's a huge benefit, and hopefully that will do some good outside of India as well. Let the world be inspired by India. I mean, you're the 5th largest economy, you're 1/7 of the globe's population. There is surely something that we can teach other people about behavioral change. Why not? Exactly. Yeah. No, for sure. Sorry, I was going to tell a side story, but it's not relevant for this context. The industry here is powerful. Right? We spoke about it, right? The way that we make change and create change. Now, the industry is not all powerful, right? Lots of things happen for different reasons, but the power that this industry has in creating that change, in showing what behavior can be, what it should be, what we should drive towards, is really impactful, right? And with power comes responsibility, right? So again, going back to why are we doing this? Why are we here? Why is this initiative so important? And why is it relevant that this industry takes responsibility, right? And understands, well, we can sit back and we can sell cars to men, and we can make, I'm sure, crores of INR and become very wealthy and buy villas at the beach. And we can do that, and we can also do something, change for good, right? To help our children grow up in a world that maybe is just a little bit better than the one that we were born into. And I think the midline data that Gitanjali showed and that you've all been, so this is just us showing what you have done, right? We haven't done anything. We've just helped with the coordination with the Gina Davis industry. But the midline has shown that there is change, right? The midline has shown that something is working. Now, I'd like to believe that this initiative is a big part of it. And I'm sure that it is in some areas. But you're not only speaking to young people, right? You're not only speaking to boys and girls, you're also speaking to parents, right? You're also speaking to me, and you're instilling change in me to pass that on to my children, and so on, right? It's a big change that we're making. All these women that are driving cars, I'm sure they also get inspired when they see another woman that is powerful and, has us, yeah. So I think that's an important message that we have as well. And children are learning who belongs, who leads, who cares, and who dreams. And it's such an important part of growing up, because there's a saying, I don't know if this is improper, but monkey see, monkey do, right? And this is, it's like a sponge, right? If you're a parent, it's like a sponge. You do something, you use a swear word, the minute later it comes right back at you, right? And this is exactly what this also does, right? So the fact that we can take responsibility upon us and say, well, we now have the power to change. In a few years, it'll be our children, right? But if they don't have something to stand upon that we've created, then they'll start where we were. And that maybe is not necessarily what we want. So I think with this initiative, we have the power to build that staircase that leads into something, well, that's just a little bit better than what we came from. So, I mean, I want to say thank you again to Nina, to Megha, and to everybody here who's invested your time today and who go back and speak to your agencies, your colleagues, the creative power that you can unleash upon all of us. And we just have to suck it up, right? Because it comes and breaks our movies and whatnot, right? So we believe in you. We believe that you can go back and just have a little bit of a think about how that's designed and what kind of impact that makes. Because you are actually quite powerful when it comes to this. And we as UNICEF, we very much look forward to continuing on that journey together with you. So thank you so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo, for those thoughtful reflections and for UNICEF's sustained partnership in advancing the IAA Voice of Change movement. Can we have the token of appreciation for Bo, please? Once again, thank you, Bo. And now it is time for a special fireside chat featuring one of advertising's most respected creative minds. Please join me in welcoming Josie Paul, Chairperson and Chief Creative Officer, BBDO India, in conversation with Megha Tata on creating culture, not just campaigns. Josie has long been one of the industry's strongest advocates for purpose-driven creativity and a steadfast supporter of the IAA Voice of Change initiative from its very outset. His belief in the power of inclusive storytelling has played an invaluable role in strengthening this movement.
Coming and supporting a cause I know you've been very closely involved with, you believe in, you've done some amazing work in this space. In fact, one of the things, when we've been talking about this journey, Josie, and it's been about 5-6 year journey, and we go to a lot of agencies, clients, and we discuss the kind of work which is happening and what needs to happen. If there is one campaign they all talk about, it's Share the Load. And clearly that is one campaign which created a kind of a cultural shift in the mindset of our society. So, I want to start this conversation with you because you are such a strong voice in making ideas into a cultural norm. What makes, according to you, a campaign a part of a culture? I mean, what is it that is what you feel is a meaningful inclusion when it comes to creating campaigns which can become a cultural norm in our society?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for staying back, guys. Yeah. You know what? When you include the world includes you. And that's how you become part of culture. Because the very act of letting someone in to your work makes that person your ambassador. I started advertising because of a particular ad I saw years ago in the late 80s. It was a print ad for Nike. And it just showed a man. You could not particularly say what race, but perhaps an African American in the distance, silhouette running somewhere in San Francisco. Beautiful golden morning light, and like poetry, a few words at the end of the beautiful press ad. It just said, they don't let you into their schools. They don't let you into their playgrounds. They don't let you into their clubs. They don't let you into their neighborhood. But the road is wide open. Just do it. Yeah? For me, that told me that this is where I should be, which is why I joined this business, and which is why even today I can see that ad as bright as any day, yeah, because that drove me. So inclusion. So when you include the world will include you. When we did Share the Load, the first piece, one of our first pieces of work, and is it okay if I show you one piece, if you don't mind? Can we show the father's apology? Because I just want to know what happened after that, because that cascading effect is what allows you to enter culture. So we'll just share that. I hope we play that.
नाना ये देखो शील्ड लेग हेलमेट होमवर्क हो गया मम्मी ये देखो
फिर दाग लगा दिया पापा ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट हेलो या आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू सेंड यू द ईमेल इन 5 मिनट्स या गिव मी 5 मिनट्स आई एम वर्किंग ऑन द प्रेजेंट
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई घर घर खेलती थी अब घर संभालती है ऑफिस संभालती है आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है पर कहता भी कैसे है
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं तुम्हारा पापा
So this was 2016, yeah? The echo is still on. The point I want to make for showing this is that just like the Nike ad, I believe that content is king, but context is King Kong. Yeah? People may forget your ad, but they'll never forget the context. They think about their lives. We noticed when we put out this ad, there were about 3,000, 4,000 comments. Nobody spoke about the ad, they spoke about their lives. And that, for us, is when we realized we had touched something. I remember this young musician who called me up. I'm not so young, actually, because he had 2 daughters. And he said, I want to make a confession. And I was like, why are you calling me up? No, he said, I've seen the ad and I want to do something. And he called me up on my mobile and he said, I have my wife here and I have my 2 girls, and I want to apologize to them with you on the phone because I want to tell them that I did the wrong thing. I never really shared the load. And I was like, oh my God, like it really affected me. And the number of stories, the number of people calling up. So yeah, comments, people talking about it, conversation, sentiment, and eventually it going into schools and colleges. And that's when you know something, you touch something.
Yeah. No, but tell me why do you think this particular campaign touched people so deeply?
I mean, it's very difficult for me. See, the thing is, I'm not an expert. I just want you to know that. I don't think my answers will be absolutely the absolute, yeah? I'm a lover. Yeah, I'm not an expert. I can just tell you what I feel about the world. But I think what we try to do with this campaign is that year after year, for 10 years now, we've tried to uncover hidden truths, things that people are not saying, but people want to say. And when you give people that permission, it's in a way, it's like permission marketing. You know, you say something and people say, hey, you know what? I didn't have the courage to say it, but you said it. Thank you for saying it. And now you give me the courage to say it. And so then people use our work as language because they were not able to say it themselves. They use our work as a platform, as our work as language. And because of that, it travels, you know. And that's probably why it's working. Because we've touched deep, hidden truths.
But did you know when you were planning this campaign that you will make a cultural movement out of it, or that was just an outcome?
You know, I think I felt it when I first wrote this line, is laundry only a woman's job? It didn't sound like a advertising line or a copywriter's line. It didn't sound clever. It didn't sound like anything anyone would ever give you a copywriter's job. But I knew deep in my heart that I had something that's going to provoke society, that's going to provoke a conversation, that'll get some sort of, noise value and buzz, and that buzz is going to create some form of sentiment. I did feel it deep in my heart. I did.
Yeah. Well, I hope you feel the same with many more ads which you create, because we need more such conversations and such narratives.
Thank you.
Josie, one of the things we always have this conversation with a lot of creative community, that this is all nice to do, it's really wonderful, we all want to do, the intent is there, but there are certain harsh realities we need to sort of work towards, and the panel also sort of spoke about it, and somehow ground realities are there, some business objectives have to be met.
Yeah.
Have you had any such experiences with any brands wherein you've had to sort of willingly or unwillingly do something which may not have been right from your conscious point of view, because it was required by a brand manager to deliver, though it was not true in its breaking any kind of a bias or shifting any bias?
I mean, of course, I'm sure everyone here would have had some experience, and we've had those experiences. I mean, I don't want to name clients or
not naming clients, but
yeah, I mean, there was a time we really wanted to show this woman who was dusky and lively and amazing, and the client, a woman, said, no, I want somebody who's fair and who is, the way we sort of stereotype
sexy
beauty.
Yeah.
And so then we wrote to our director, to our boss. We wrote a letter to our boss, and I think that had an impact. But I'm just saying that sometimes you do face things like this. But sometimes it works if you write a letter, sometimes you lose the account.
And where do you think one has to draw the line here?
I don't know. I have no idea. Like I said, I'm not an expert. So I cannot give an exact answer to that. It's how you read the room, how you sense the world. And of course, you have your partners with you. I'm sure, you know what I'm talking about. You got to think about your folks now. So there's so many things at play, right? It's you and your partners and what impact it has on people around you.
Yeah.
You want to say anything, my friend? I mean, beyond.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Pallavi had a great example or analogy of the drip irrigation concept. I think that was wonderful. More and more of that drip irrigation is needed in our society. But tell me again, if there is, AI has obviously been a big change which has added into our world of creativity as well. And one of the things we also know that AI is, the outcome of AI is as much as what the input is, right? So that the more richer the data which goes in, that's how the richer the data that comes out.
Correct.
But the data going in is from this society who already comes with a certain bias in their mind. How do you see that part getting navigated with more and more AI content being generated by certain prompts? So even if today when you say I want to create an ad, for example, with a house which has a parent giving children, a parenting advice, more likely that it will be shown a woman being the main parent or a main caregiver. Where do you think is the solution to this?
So AI, I mean, is a great partner, it's a good collaborator, but AI bases itself on the past, on patterns, and it gives you the collective point of view. What we try and do is, we don't look for insights, we look for confessions. Now and I'll explain what I mean. Insights are based on patterns and collective, but confessions are based on what an individual feels. And often what an individual feels at a very deep level is what the world feels. I'll give you a simple example. We have something called the white room in our office, yeah? In that room, when you sit in that room, something happens to you. It's a safe space, and we allow people to speak. So one of our clients came to us, that's eBay. And eBay came and said, can you give us a, sort of a purpose for our brand, eBay? And we were like, eBay? You guys need us in India to give you a purpose? You guys are so big worldwide. You have the best companies in the world working for you. And you're an e-commerce company. What purpose do you need from people like us? So I was not very sure whether this was going to be serious. But I said, let's take a chance. And I called everyone into the room and I said, let's talk. And it's not just about creative people. I believe everybody's creative. Everyone's born creative. It's just somewhere along the way we start getting affected about our own creativity. But everybody's sitting in the room and I said, why do you buy things? Why do we buy things? And I said, we're going to do just 29 minutes because maybe this is not very serious. And so people began to really talk and speak as though like everyone's talking about brands and cool and trying to look good and be clever. And then as we were going along, I started, showing my own vulnerabilities to this exercise. That led to more people being a little more real about themselves and why they buy. 2 hours went by and nobody is leaving. The light's dimming, we have a candle in the center, the lights are not on, the day is sort of, it's evening. And suddenly, after 2 hours, one woman said, I want to say something. And she hadn't spoken right through. And she said, I buy things because I was born a girl. My grandmother wanted a boy. I was born a girl. And she's deeply disappointed. And I see that disappointment in her every day. So I buy things to prove to her that I'm better than any guy, any boy. Yeah? Now that was like a breakdown, a breakthrough. And immediately a lot more people began to speak and I said, and everyone started to cry. I said, we're going to stop this session. And they said, no, we shouldn't stop this, we want to continue. So this went on for 3 hours, everyone getting very confessional. And then we came up with 8 spaces for this brand. And one of them was that eBay has 100 million things that don't judge. A skipping rope does not judge if you're 75 years old.
Lovely.
A diya does not judge if you're Hindu or Muslim. A ring does not judge if you're straight or gay. So 100 million things that don't judge, eBay things don't judge. That was what we offered the client. And they loved it. The film was fabulous, it did well. I got letters from CEOs of eBay across the world saying thank you for letting us know why we come to work.
Wow.
And now
That's
I couldn't do that alone. You can't do that alone. You can't do that trying to manufacture something in your mind. You had to listen. And more importantly, I'm not sure AI would give me that. I'm not against AI. AI is our collaborator. We all know it's doing amazing things for us. But this depth is difficult to find.
You definitely need a human interventions and emotions.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What a beautiful story. You know, we are all here to listen to your stories, Josie, because we know you're a great storyteller. I don't have a bunch of questions which are very poignant in any form. We want to hear stories from you. If you can share any other story which you have felt, you know, good, bad, or ugly as well, you know, which left a little like a mark in your mind, and generally to say that, you know, wow, this was like, your eBay story is beautiful, we all going to go with it.
You know what, I don't want to be the center of attraction.
You are! Hello! Yes,
Yeah,
trigger, PD trigger.
So, Josie, you're always in your usual modest self, and therefore it's very difficult to expect you to narrate the story. Let me take you back to an evening in the middle of 2015. This is a year before Share the Load won pretty much everything under the sun in Cannes. This was the year you won the first Glass Lions for Touch the Pickle. I want you to tell us a story of how that idea came about and how it manifested a massive change. I remember meeting you and Ajay right after you won the award, and just the emotions that was flowing through the Indian contingent in Cannes was something that I have not seen since, and I had not seen till then. So
That was one of my questions, but thanks, PD. Yes, touch the
Seriously,
pickle.
guys,
Touch the
seriously.
pickle. Has touched the chord.
So I don't know if you know this campaign, but I'll tell you what happened. PNG called us saying, we'd like you to do a campaign for us, a social campaign for Whisper sanitary pads, napkins. And 4 guys go for the meeting, okay? And it was really, I mean, how stupid of us. And there are these 6 amazing women at PNG, and they're giving us a brief. And as they're giving us a brief, I said to them, you know, it's all very fine, this brief of yours, but why the hell do you all always show blood as blue? Because that's the only thing I knew about why is blood blue. So they got a bit taken aback, and they said, oh, Josie, you're trying to provoke us. Let's tell you what you have no clue about. And then they spoke about all the things that hold women back in many parts of the country. And it was like, it was an eye-opener for me. I realized how little I know about anything after that. And they really went for it. And they spoke about, you know, the fact that you can't go into the kitchen, and all the other stories started coming out. And we 4 men are like, oh my God, you know. And so when we went back, I just felt that this brief had turned into something very emotional. It was no longer a brief. In fact, the brief sounds by its nature a transactional thing, but what we experienced there was so much more emotional. I don't know what to call it, whether it was a briefing or whatever that was, that exchange. And it affected me deeply, and when we went back, we were all talking about it, and we said, you know what, forget about trying to be clever and trying to do this kick-ass campaign that makes us look good. Let's just create a platform, and what if we call it Touch the Pickle? And we were not sure, we had no reference points. There was nothing in the world, our professors, teachers, parents, no one had told us about doing anything like this. It was just the greatness of PNG that they said, hey, let's try this out. Let's go for it. They did some research. They found that it was connecting with women across the country. And so they said, let's do this campaign. And that's what happened. And before we knew it, it had, you know, caught fire. So essentially, we just started the fire. It created a platform, and then the world took over. And so it was never us, honestly. We cannot own that campaign. That campaign is because of the people who took it forward, the volunteers, the hand raisers, everyone who said, I want to be an ambassador for this, you know. So yeah, it's a different approach.
Amazing, yeah. You know, you have obviously have wonderful campaigns under your belt. Tell me, how do you inspire young talent to think more inclusive?
Anyone has an answer, yeah?
If anyone does.
I'd like to say something here. I'm in the field of education, and Josie and I, we know each other because he also teaches at Xavier's, right? And I'll give you a small instance. Now, since so many years, my target audience are the students who've completed their 12th, so that they come in for a graduation into advertising and branding. And then there are graduates who come into post-graduation. So every session I have with my students, I end that session with Josie's ads. Now, the impact it has is this. Year after year, I see students wanting to fall in love with advertising because of his ads. I have seen kids who have changed their careers. Like this year, I've got a 40-year-old woman who is into a different field. She says, I want to restart career again, and I want to move into advertising. I've got an autistic kid. I've got a doctor who's joined advertising again. Now, the impact his stories or his ads, what it does is, he says he's not an expert, but he's a role model. We need people who understand or who can look at what they can do for the society later. So we are bringing in more people into that field of advertising, branding, and storytelling.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
More
Josie.
power to you. Josie, that's
Absolutely.
That is all you. It's all you. Which is great that you're doing it with students, but still, when you are talking to your team people or you're in a conversation with, general creative community or young kids, what are the things you want to, how do you inspire them? Besides, obviously, your work is great inspiration, but still.
You know what, I just tell them my stories. Yeah, that's all I do. I don't try to give a lesson to it. Like I speak about the very first time when I had to present to Philips, and I was in Ogilvy, and everyone in the room, I was 21, and just like this, there was a big marketing department, and they said no, they didn't like the ad. And so I, rushed and jumped onto the windowsill and said, I'm going to jump. If you guys don't approve my ad, it's my first ad. It's my first ad, and if you kill it, my career's gone. And I didn't know what madness hit me. But there I was on the windowsill waiting to jump, and the entire marketing team is shit scared. And everybody leaves the room. The marketing director is now doing a one-on-one with me, negotiating with me not to jump so that he gets a chance to think about the work. So these are the kind of stories I speak about because, I don't know why I did those things, right? It's just you're so obsessed with what you're doing, you're not thinking straight. The good thing is when I stood on the windowsill, I realized I was on the first floor. So there was a good chance that not too much damage. But the story, this is psychology of, I don't think in Philips they'd ever seen a guy sell work that way. And of course, they approved the film, but they wrote a mail to Suresh Malik saying that we like the work, but please we don't want to see him again. Yeah. So that's, so the stories like this, I sometimes I don't know what happens to me. I get so into the work, into the person or whatever I'm writing for. I remember when I did this campaign called Stand By Tough Moms, right? When moms are tough, people tend to go against them. The in-laws and others start blaming them for being tough on the kids. But she's doing it because she loves, it's tough love, right? She loves the child, and she's trying to do the right thing for him or her. And I remember presenting this thought of it's good to be tough to a global creative session that we were having in Chicago. People from Japan, Brazil, all had fabulous ideas with great drawings on the board, and everything was looking so amazing. I felt like shit that I had nothing but a thought. So I put it down on a chart paper and I wrapped it around my body. And I said, I'm going to make myself a weapon, of this idea because everyone's so good at drawing and I'm not. And so as the CMO of that global company came around, I spoke about my truth and what I feel, and that it's all very nice to be poetic about, mothers, but what about the shit work they do? What about 90% of the work that they do is crap? And that it sometimes is important to be tough. And then as I'm talking, I get so caught up that I fall down. So now I'm lying on the floor horizontal and I'm presenting. And the entire audience is around me looking down. And it's like, you don't know what the shit's happening to you, man. And And then eventually, finally, and you know what, the CMO began to cry. She got affected because maybe I touched something deep within her. And then we all left, and everyone in the evening, there was celebration, oh good, everything was great. And someone said, Josie, why did you fall? And I said, my body told me. And so they created a WhatsApp group called My Body Told Me. Yeah. And then a week later, we got a call from the worldwide guys saying that they're going with the work that I shared. And that's how we got a global thing. Yeah?
Amazing.
So you don't know. I don't have a formula. You know, I just feel that you have to be in love. You have to be a lover. You can't be an expert, is what I think.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautifully said. So one of the things we also keep discussing when we have conversations with advertising fraternity is that what is it that not one or maybe a few gender stereotypes we want this industry to completely do away with? Like, we shouldn't be having a conversation. There shouldn't be any creative which brings that stereotype. Is there anything which you feel that starting tomorrow we should not have that particular stereotype in any of our creativity?
Again, you know, audience support, yeah. I mean, anything that y'all feel. Because I really, I mean, for me, it's like you got to feel it at that moment, and it's got to be personal. You want to do it. I think you mentioned it, right? I think you mentioned it, and I really loved your point, Anna, that somewhere you got to feel it, right? You want to live in a world that it's like a world you wish you were living in, right? So it's that world you're trying to create with your work. So it's those things, and I can't immediately say I have an answer, but one of the things I would do is I'd ask all the guys who created all that shit work in the past, which showed women in a poor light, to come and apologize. You know? Maybe.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. What is it that you feel that our industry is, like, what are the steps we could take to make it a more inclusive, creative environment?
I don't know, yeah. I have no idea.
But from your experience, based on, you know, the people you have had interactions with, one, of course, who are agreeable to do clients like P&G, but I'm sure there are enough more who say, you know, this is wonderful, but I still got to do what I got to do. You know, how do you just, some insights which you may have taken from your experiences to say, you know, okay, maybe if we would do X, Y, Z. Now, for example, what IA is doing right now, such industry bodies, these are small steps in the direction where we're having these conversations, we're getting people to be more conscious about, you know, being more inclusive in their creative process. But you're such an industry stalwart, your view from the top will be far more insightful.
I mean, sorry to butt in, but I think it's just about how can we keep an open mind, and how can we help people also keep an open mind. And I don't know, to allow yourself to understand the otherness of others is a tough one, because you've been conditioned. So how do you break your own conditioning? You know, how do you realize that the world's got you? Yeah, media has got you, AI has got you, you know, social media has got you. And how can you have this heightened awareness, this heightened enlightenment, which tells you that, yes, you are being sort of controlled by media, but you can also rise above it. And that is why we do these white room sessions, because it allows us to have a diverse collision that forces you to rearrange yourself every other day, you know. And that's what you're trying to do. Every time you're saying, change me, help me, change me.
Change me.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Hey, thanks, Megha.
Yeah.
That was really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Josie, for your time.
Thanks for listening, guys.
It's been wonderful, and thank you everyone for staying back till the end of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josie and Megha, for such an inspiring, thought-provoking conversation and highly entertaining anecdotes. Can I request, may I now call upon Nandini Dias, Honorary Secretary, IAA India Chapter, and Jaideep Gandhi, Vice President, IAA India and Founder, Another India, to present special mementos to our panel. Thank you both once again. And now, to formally conclude today's program, may I invite Nina Elavia Jaipuria and Megha Tata back on stage for the vote of thanks.
So we've all been the voice of change today, and for that, a round of applause is due. Thank you very much. You know, being the voice of change is about thinking, doing, and representing what the world could look like from what it is today. And I think instead of us being in this room with lip service and doing tick marks on tokenism, I think all of us need to just go back this evening and reflect on what is that one deep-rooted gender norm I personally want to eradicate from my life, from my work, from my family, and from the world. And you will notice that over a period of time, you will work on it consciously and make sure that everybody around you works with you with it. So the collective effort that Voice of Change would like to see actually starts with all of us individually. Yeah? While it is a collective effort, I think it starts with all of us. And so the journey's just begun. We've moved the needle, but we have miles to go before we sleep. And we look forward to now visiting all the agencies all over again with the report that we have to show them the progress that we've, of course, made, but to also talk to them about how do we get working on those deep-rooted gender skews and biases that we need to break together. So, gentlemen and ladies, thank you so much for being here today, but be with us on this journey of Voice of Change today and forever. Thank you.
And thank you once again, UNICEF, GDI, and Manifest for making this evening and this afternoon come alive. Thank you all the panelists who were here. Thank you so much, Josie, for your stories. You are a stalwart and you have all the answers. You just were not sharing that with us. But thank you everyone for being here. Really appreciate your support, and we hope, like Nina said, that you will be part of our journey as we go along. Thank you once again. Please join us for some tea and snacks.
I do want to call out the commitment that IAA has had over the last many years. I think it began with Megha, and Voice of Change started with Megha, and we've come a long way. And I would like to thank IAA as an association and all the members there who take Voice of Change so seriously and are so committed to it year after year after year. Thank you. From the bottom of our hearts. Thank you, everybody.